Proportional Response. Book 1, Chapter 8, Part 9, A Falling Star. Hannibal surprised himself at how quickly he recovered from the excitement. His self-appointed human protectors had been, somewhat sheepishly, replaced by his own guards as soon as they had regained the presence of mind to realize what the humans had done. He finally stood, handed his drink to the male of the pair, grabbed the female, and swept her out onto the dance floor. He visually cased the room as he moved about the floor. The Thermican, Arabso, and a few other ambassadors had recovered more quickly than he did. I need to put in for a transfer. As much as I enjoy this posting, it is growing too much for me. Others would have recovered faster and represented Her Majesty better. The Findle ambassador lay, twitching slightly, in a feathered heap on the floor. Everyone seemed to be ignoring her, and she was the one ambassador that no human had moved to help. He watched through the course of the song and noticed that the ambassador was not being totally ignored. People stole sidelong glances at her, some of disgust, some anger, but none of pity. They know who went talking to the Zoltans. They don't know that is what the humans planned. He found himself feeling a little pity for the woman. She'd been played just as surely as Kilintar, but, in his opinion, deserved it less. The Finadil act out of instinct, fear, habit, and self-preservation, rather than malice or a desire to dominate. Their culture has always revolved around finding the most powerful and seeking protection. I do hope the humans don't have anything too terrible planned for them. The song ended. He brought his guard in for a hug and spoke in her ear. See to the Findle ambassador's comfort and dignity, as you did me. He stepped back and kissed her hand. She gave him a quizzical look, but nodded compliance and moved away with purpose. He went to get a refreshment and watched their progress out of the corner of his eye. He would have to hand out commendations in the morning. His people had performed well under very trying circumstances. As his people tended to Windle, Hannibal felt the hairs on the back of his hands stand up and turned to see Henry watching him intently. He felt a thrill of fear for a moment. He'd gone off script here, and he knew how heavily Henry had planned all this. His friend smiled, however, then nodded and raised his glass. Did he plan this too, or are my actions just a happy accident? I'm getting too old for this. He turned and found a human woman standing in front of him, obviously expecting to be asked onto the floor. He complied, then started. She was one of his guards. She was in a fetching nightgown rather than a uniform, but even his untrained eye was sure she had the ability to hide weapons under it. He frowned at her as the dance started. He'd told them he didn't want them here. She smiled, with dimples, at his frown and leaned in close. You said you did not want humans in Fartheran uniforms at the party. You did not tell us not to be here, so here we are. We are sworn to the Empire, and that also means to you, and we will protect you. Don't doubt that. He chuckled ruefully and shook his head. It seems that, as much as I have learned about humans, I should have expected this. I will have to be more specific with my orders in the future. A twinkle appeared in her eye as he sent her into a spin, and he got the distinct feeling that he could specify all he wanted, but it wouldn't do much good. Kilintar stomped back towards his quarters. He could feel the red on the edges of his eyes, but had no target for his fury. Then he saw one. A member of the guard tried to peel away, no doubt to report to that woman. He pulled his sidearm and shot the traitor in the back. The man fell to the ground, but wasn't dead. The traitor turned over, hands raised, blood coming out of his snout and his eyes. He looked down at the man and felt his eyes go fully red as he raised his pistol again. The man tried to protest, tried to speak, but he just smiled and put a pulse through the traitor's open mouth. She's going to be too dangerous to me now. No choice, I will challenge her to the death. Thankfully, I have Sarago to stand with me. He should be able to take out whoever she brings with her in moments. Maybe his reputation will prevent her from accepting the challenge. I hope not. He moved back towards his quarters, only paying peripheral attention to the men who stayed behind to keep people from seeing the mess until someone cleaned it up. I had forgotten how good a red-eyed kill feels. I've been doing this job too long, or at least restraining myself too long. I need to go home and book a trip to a peasant hunting ranch soon. Preferably one which has youngsters I can take down." They reached the door to his quarters, and he felt the red rage try to rise in his eyes again. The doors were completely ajar. Jalat, not only in his quarters, but with the door open. There was only one answer. He barreled through the door, snout raised and fists clenched. The exultant ambassador sat in his receiving room, her feet up on his drinks table, sipping some from his wine. A peasant girl, in his own quarters, kneeled on the floor beside her. Wait, not just any peasant girl. I know her. From where? Realization hit him with near physical force. That prostitute. The one I figured out was feeding Jalat information. She dies now. He felt his eyes go red as he slammed the door closed behind Surago, and felt a moment of amusement as he heard it slam into someone's snout. He turned to Jalat, who hadn't bothered to look up from the book, his book, that she had been reading. He stalked slowly toward the kneeling female, but spoke fast. "Enough of this. I am beset on all sides by that damnable human, and I will not tolerate this sort of insolence from my own ambassador. You force your way into my own quarters and bring your damnable spy with you? I could probably justify killing you where you sit, but it would be more trouble than it's worth. I challenge you, Jalat. I challenge your rights to be ambassador. I challenge your life, and I will take it in the arena of blood. Choose your armsman to stand with you, and make peace with your ancestors, because tomorrow you and your champion will die at the hands of my armsman, Sorako. Your little spy, however, dies now." She ignored him, as if he was a bootlicking peasant. He let his claws out and started around the table, ready to put a good scratch into her hide for the insult before he tore into the peasant. She lifted her smallest talon, and suddenly a great hand fell on his neck, while a leg pushed against his and forced him to his knees. "Who would dare? Surago, kill this impudent fool. I will not be manhandled like this. Surago." Nothing happened, and he turned his head to see who held him. For the first time in what seemed like a lifetime, he felt true fear course through his body. He stared into the quiet, dispassionate eyes of none other than his own Surago. "Surago, what is the meaning of this? You have faithfully served me all of your life. How dare you betray House Render? Get that woman and that miserable peasant out of here, or I will." Surago's hand closed around his neck and cut off his words, and heat appeared in his eyes. Jalat gave a small giggle, then spoke without looking up from her reading. "Miserable excuse for a peasant, Kilintar. Now, you shouldn't talk about your beloved bride to be that way. Oh no, I mean, everyone knows how madly in love with her you are, and how you have chosen to marry her without even asking your clan's permission. The scandal is all over the court back home by now, and your own clan has ejected you for it. As for Surago, he has betrayed no one, you old fool. He has not served you, Kilintar, never you. He is loyal to House Srenda, and he retains that loyalty still. I understand they're considering marrying him in at the bottom of the family and allowing him voting rights for his lifetime of service. That will make his children, who are about to reach their majority, second-generation voters, which will help their college plans out greatly. You didn't even know that he had kids, did you? Of course not. To you, he has never been much more than that painting there on your wall. As for your challenge..." She unsheathed a single claw, used it to cut away the fabric from his shoulder, and gouged a line across his collarbone. "You have no right to challenge me, you voteless peasant, and you haven't since you got halfway back from embarrassing the Republic. Again." He struggled under Surago's grip, and stared at the man. "Get off of me. I swear, I will have you flayed alive. If you think I'm going to marry anyone, you are sorely mistaken. I am the master of House Srenda, Lord of..." Surago cut him off by forcing him to bow forward more. The man spoke. "Nothing. You are Lord of nothing." He'd been forced into a position where he could barely breathe. "Release me, Surago. If you think this will stand, you are wrong. I am going directly to my clan, and I will force them to understand. I will bring us back to glory. Now let me go." "Your clan, Kilintar? Your clan is done with you. Who do you think the spy you killed belonged to? You didn't even pay attention to the crest, did you? Who do you think stripped you of your vote?" The assembly gave them a choice. Go along with this plan, eject you, and accept a one-generation reduction in voting power, or risk a vote to have the entire clan stripped of their voting rights. Which do you think they chose? They didn't even have the sway in the assembly, to put one of their own up as ambassador, specifically because of your failings, including allowing that idiot nephew of yours to not only be ambassador but remain after he failed at such a simple task. But no, Kilintar, you are a man without clan, without a vote, and without recourse. I would have you bundled up and shipped off, but alas, I can't. You have messed everything up so badly, despite my best efforts, that we can't risk a vote for a new Prime Minister. There is an almost even chance that we'd lose.
He seethed, kneeling there on the ground as she gave a derisive laugh.
Can you imagine? An Arabso Prime Minister or a Thermicron? No, Kilintar, you will accept the humiliation of marrying this.
She gestured to the woman kneeling on the floor.
The whore you fell madly in love with and chose to marry despite all tradition and good lineage. And you will produce children from her quickly. The ceremony will take place first thing in the morning. A small, quiet affair you are going to try to hide, but whispers will get out. How far those whispers get out, and whether they get out to the peasantry that the vaunted Kilintar is now one of them, will be up to you and how well you obey. You will, however, retain your position as Prime Minister. For now. But this gallivanting about and doing things I specifically told you not to do ends today. You and your position are now in my receivership. We will play the parts we need to play in public, within limits.
She gave him a dangerous look.
But you will not do anything without my consent, and you will only do as you are specifically allowed. To start with, you will furnish me with every username and password you possesses, and I mean all of them, from your personal social media accounts, including the hidden ones you use for your entertainment, to your bank accounts, to your official login credentials. Tonight, you and I will be going down to security and changing the biometrics on all of your official accounts to respond to me as though I were you. Don't look at me like that. It can be done, and was designed so for just such an occasion as this. It has been generations since those protocols had to be used, but they exist. Don't test me, Kilintar Noman. That is your new name, by the way, and I expect you to respond to it promptly from this point forth. You know, and know well, the kinds of punishments I can mete out to a peasant in receivership. Don't test me.
She turned to leave, then turned back with a look on her face like she'd just remembered something.
Oh yes, one last thing. You have let the humans lead you about by the nose, and the Assembly has decided that you should be given a visible reward for allowing that. Sorago.
She pulled a gold loop from a hidden pocket. It was an inch or two in diameter and had a small opening. Sorago grabbed his snout and pulled his chin up, holding him fast. She knelt down, gave him a wicked smile, positioned the opening onto either side of his septum, and pushed it through. His eyes watered as the somewhat dull end of the ring forced its way through the cartilage of his nostril. He did not struggle. He knew he couldn't beat Sorago, and didn't want the damage to be worse. Jalad pulled out another small piece of gold and some sort of instrument. He couldn't see what she did with them very well, but when she finished, he had an unbroken ring of gold hanging out of his nose.
There. See, you can hold still and do as you are told if you have the proper motivation.
She turned to the prostitute.
It will be your charge to make sure that he always has the proper motivation. He is to go nowhere without you, and I expect regular reports on his actions. If he manages to mess up, you will pay for it at least as much as he does.
Kilintar growled and kept his eyes on the floor. To be stripped of title, of rank. He'd been stripped of his very identity. I will kill you one day, woman. I will. You and this filthy sow you expect me to stud, and whatever bastard children she pushes out. This I vow. I will also see the entire human race annihilated, even if I have to bring the wrath of the old machines down on us, even if it means these alternates being the subject to the ultimate sanction of the old machines. I will see humanity die,